Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on EPM Automation Framework. My name is Yana, and I'm the Marketing Director at US Analytics. Before we begin, we just want to introduce ourselves and our organization. We are a leading EPM and analytics services firm. We've been in the business for over 21 years, helping enterprise-level organizations picture simplicity, picture financial, digital transformation, and picture results through the systems we build, implement, and support for our clients. This is a sampling of our EPM clients. We've got a pretty diverse range of companies and verticals that we service. Our service offerings and focus solutions really kind of aim to help enterprise-level organizations transform their financial systems and processes. And today, again, we really want to just introduce our proprietary automation framework and really kind of expand on the value of utilizing such a technology. It can be used both in on-premise and cloud systems, including the suite of Oracle technology products and those that are non-Oracle, like OneStream. The value of leveraging technology like this as a customer really allows us to build out your projects faster, even in the development phase, saving you time and money. You'll see a lot less downtime utilizing automation technologies, earlier detection of issues, more robust and repeatable tasks. Ultimately, what this tool does is really tie all of your financial systems and technologies together, simplifying processes, lowering maintenance and overhead costs, and improving efficiency among team members. Joining us today, we've got our CEO and President, Scott Pressler, and obviously myself. We've got our presenters, Brian Marshall, he is the VP of Delivery, and Jennifer Kennard, who is our Managing Director of Support Services. And before we dive into the framework and all that it encompasses, I'm going to have Scott walk us through our industry insights and really the direct ROI of using an automation tool like ours and how transformational this tool can be for organizations. So Scott, take it away.
Thank you for that handoff. I just really have a short introduction regarding just the overall experience in our space, which is the financial transformation application space, primarily in the Oracle landscape. We built out this automation framework technology over the past few years. We built hundreds of these systems, and recognizing some of the inefficiencies and limitations of not having a repeatable process, it was some of the core objective that now we are seeing and our clients are benefiting from. Again, our space, ultimately, a lot of organizations are moving to the cloud, but our tool that we're going to talk about today, I still think of it as the conductor underneath the covers that help regulate and simplify building and managing now of these applications. What we'll show you, like I mentioned earlier, was a best practice, the intent to support, lower the overhead, the simplicity, save time, and we're really excited about what we're seeing with our clients and ultimately what their reaction and feedback is. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this baton now to Brian Marshall, and Brian will talk a little bit more about the product, obviously introducing it. This product is actually embedded in our support contracts that for all our clients. So thank you. Brian?
Okay, so as Scott mentioned earlier, over the last 20 years of doing this, we all go in as consultants and we build an automated process. It's always at the end of the project, and it's always, for lack of a better word, something that we leave to the end, and it's almost an afterthought. And over that last 20 years, we've kind of come to understand that every consultant does it a little bit differently, and the way that they may do that is somewhat inconsistent in the feature set that's available, right? some people use Windows Batch and it works for them and they really like it and that's what they're comfortable with. Other people might use PowerShell because it has more control and more feature functionality around emailing and stuff like that, just kind of baked in. Some of our clients are running Linux and we don't have the option to do Windows Batch. It's more of an SH file or something along those lines. So there's a lot of different ways that we can accomplish these things. And what we determined was we're kind of tired of there being a lot of different options when we go into our clients. And this especially affects our managed services group as we hand off clients over to the managed services group to say, hey, here's another project we did it differently this time too. So we realized that and we said, okay, this doesn't make sense. We're going to build something for this, so that when our consultants go into a client and we go through a project, we always get the same thing. So the US Analytics Automation Framework was born a few years ago, and anytime we go in and do an implementation, we use this framework as how we do our automation, and it provides us with a couple of different things from our perspective, independent of even the ones on the screen. Number one, instead of it being an afterthought, you always get a solid set of automated tools as a client that you're left with at the end of our projects. And then number two, that automated set of tools comes with all these cool features like unified logging. So instead of having to go look for the logs, they're all in one place. And even better than that, when a process fails, it will attach that log to the email so that you don't even have to go look for it. You can just open the log on your computer, not have to log into the server, not have to look at the automation at all. And that may tell you a lot of things about what's going on. And the same applies for our error handling. So when we have errors, the email is going to indicate, what step the error occurred on, how long it took, all the different things that matter a lot when we're trying to understand why did something go wrong in our automated processes. It also gives us finite control over every step in the process. So that could be something as simple as saying, I want to enable or disable a step. And honestly, we found that we use the framework even more during our development cycle than we ever thought we would, because we always wait till the end. But when we have this tool available and we're going through our development cycle, we can automate stuff up front so that when we're going through and saying I'm going to load data, or I'm going to load metadata, or I'm going to do anything on my development lifecycle, I use this tool to enable myself to go faster and to enable myself to see when things are done more rapidly and to see why things fail if they fail more rapidly. And having finite control over those steps allows us to test things without having to completely remove them. So I can just go disable a bunch of steps in my process and then just run that one step that I might care about and then go re-enable everything when I'm ready to go back to doing the full cycle. The other thing we have is like precedent. So if I need to go in and say, hey, if this process fails, that means I need to do something different. So I can tell it to go do something completely different. And then finally, we obviously have the email notification that you're seeing there on the right. So it'll tell us every single step of the process, how long each step took. And this is really a way for us to be more proactive about what we're seeing as an administrator. So when we go through and we say, this process is taking 17 minutes, it used to take 12 minutes, I can go open up an old email, I can go open up a new email and compare the two and kind of understand why is it those two things are different. So why do we use an automation tool like this? And it really comes down to trying to make those recurring tasks easier and to give us those notifications when things go wrong. So one of the things we're going to get is human error kind of goes out the window, right? Now instead of seeing, did we do all the steps that we were supposed to do? Did we get everything done the way we wanted to get it done? The process happens exactly the same every time that we run it. And so our manual processes, we don't have to do as many of those. We can automate more of our processes because it's easier to do. Before we might say, I don't really feel like automating that. That takes too much time. Or, I do this all the time, but I have it documented, so it's okay. But with this system and this framework that just comes with our projects and with our managed services group, now we can take that extra effort out of the equation when you're trying to make decisions around things, whether things should be manual or automated. Most of the time we want to have as much automation as possible, again, to reduce that human error that inevitably will bite all of us at one time or another. Obviously, it allows us to leverage the after-hours system time. When users aren't active at that time, even when you have a 24-hour window, when you're spread across the globe, you're still going to have periods of time where you specify and say, I want it to do stuff during this period. Why that's important is with all of the notifications and error handling and error logging that we have built into the system, it makes it a lot easier to do that and kind of feel good that you know that it's happening. You're going to get an email that's going to be high priority if something went wrong, and you'll get a notification that maybe you need to get up earlier the next morning to figure out what's going on. You don't have to sit and babysit things nearly as much. Obviously, it's going to provide that simplification because now you're not building your own custom process. You're using one that's kind of out of the box. And it provides that standardization so that all of your different automated processes have done the same thing. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone into a client and literally seen 7 or 8 different types of automation strung together because over the last 10 years, they had 5 or 6 different consultants doing things at different periods of time. So with this framework, there's automatically a standard that's applied to everything you do from an automation perspective as it applies to all the different EPM products. We've also used this product to speed up execution time. So there's nothing like visibility when it comes to performance tuning. And if you get an email that says, hey, this process took 23 minutes, and you look at the process and you're looking at 5 steps that made up 15 of those 23 minutes, and all of a sudden you can parallelize those, our parallel execution gives us an opportunity to really cut out time without necessarily having to make major changes to your applications. And we've seen that time and again in clients where we put this in and suddenly things get faster just because we're able to have more visibility as to what's slowing us down. And obviously the maintenance burden as an administrator, you're not constantly wondering, did things fail? Or if they fail, you're not having to spend nearly as much time understanding why did it fail and where are the logs and what do I need to be looking at. You're going to get an attachment in your email that says, here's the log, go look at this log, and it will probably tell you where to go look next. So you're not just, following the spaghetti code and picking up the one piece of spaghetti and having the whole bowl come with it. You get that single strand instead of having to go digging for it. And why would you not want to do this? I mean, from our perspective, all of our different, all the things that I mentioned earlier around building it. It seems like a good idea sometimes. It might even be fun for people that are more technically minded. But then when you start to add in things like notifications and things like logging and having a design around what you're going to do, it can take you weeks to go build something like that. Why not use something that we've implemented at dozens of clients that has a really good track record of providing you with that solution? And again, if you're our client, it comes with it anyway. So, primary use cases for the functionality that we're talking about: schedule maintenance, metadata updates, any of your automated processes around scheduled data loads, after hours calcs, and really anything that you want to kick off that has a lot of different dependencies that we need to be able to do. And the cool part is, anything we do with the toolkit is going to, with the framework, it's really going to allow us to execute things either on demand or on an automated process. So we're not limited or bound by saying, hey, this is automated, but I can't kick it off anytime I want to. It's still going to work from an ad hoc perspective. So what can we use this for? So what you'll see here is, at least from our perspective in the products that we work with at US Analytics, it's really all about Oracle EPM Cloud and OneStream, whether that's, and really Oracle on-prem as well. But so those are going to be your 3 big product sets. But then at the end, you'll see the big thing that adds a lot of power to the solution is we built the automation framework kind of foundationally on top of PowerShell. And PowerShell, if you're not familiar with it, it's a really amazing tool from Microsoft that has really kind of taken call it the command line interface market by storm and really taken over in a lot of instances. It's cross-platform. It works on Linux. It works on Windows. It just has a tremendous amount of functionality, to the point where you can do almost anything inside of it. So giving administrators and users the ability to kick off things that PowerShell can do really opens up the possibilities of, hey, there's nothing like hearing an automation tool can't do something. Oh, it can't do that. I can't move a file. I can't copy a file. I can't change a file. Well, with PowerShell at our fingertips as part of this solution, it really gives us the ability to do anything that you can think of, whether it's manipulating files as you prepare them for load into the cloud, or parsing things that you pull down from the cloud that you're going to send to another source. We've used it for all kinds of things like that. So, a few things that we've gone through that you can do. We do have the data dependencies. So, if a data load fails, don't bother doing a calc. You might still want to do other steps. So it gives you the ability to kind of pick and choose what you want to execute based on events that occur inside of the process itself. Obviously, we've added the parallel processing that I talked about earlier. We also have looping structure. So if you have 10 files that you want to loop through, but you're doing the same process for all 10 files, and maybe it's 5 steps per file, you don't want to build a process that's got 40 steps, right? You might want to build a process that has 5 steps that you just execute 10 times. It's also self-documenting. So when you go through this process, and you'll see it here in a minute when Stan provides us with a demonstration, you don't have to spend a lot of time building documentation because the steps themselves, you're going to name a step. You're going to tell us what that step is doing as part of your configuration. And then when you come in and open it, you're going to know, okay, this step did that. And if something's failing or if there's an issue, then again, that self-documentation will help us find the problem. And then obviously the notification system that I've talked about a few times now, failure emails have logs. It really allows us to give you the ability to hone in on what is causing issues. And the last thing, we do have centralized environment variables so that when, if you're changing a period or a year or things like that, you can go change it inside of the automation tool itself, and then it's going to change it for all of your automated processes, not necessarily a one-off. So from a security perspective, everything that we do, we don't store things in plain text. And that's a really important principle when we look at automated processes. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone into a client and looked at their automation processes and gone, wow, okay, well, there's your password. That's good. Good to know. For the admin of your entire system that reports to the SEC. Great. Glad to have that. So stuff like that really gives us the ability to go through and make sure that you're more secure in the way that we automate things. And whether that's a password that's going to be connecting to the cloud through Oracle's tools, or if that's something else, then we have the ability to go through and make sure that everything is encrypted, that nothing sits in the code, nothing is documented anywhere. Let's keep going. So a few examples of some of the clients that are using this right now, and this is by no means an extensive list of everybody, but we wanted to highlight some of the advanced things that we've done with it. At Autoliv, they had 25 to 30 Essbase cubes, and they had this extensive process that was backing things up. And for the longest time, they thought it was working just fine until they realized, like 6 months in, when they needed to restore something, that somebody had changed the password and never updated the backup process. So they didn't have any notifications built in. It was just a backup process that was very fire and forget, and it had been firing and everybody forgot. So we replaced that backup system with the automation framework that allowed us to go in and back up those cubes, and every night they get an email saying it was either successful, or if it wasn't successful, it can give them an indication of why. For Topa Equities, we have data loads out there, and they load data from a variety of different systems. And as part of that process, they don't always know when those files are going to come in. So one of the cool things that we set up as part of the framework is a folder monitoring tool. So essentially, it just sits out there and waits and says, I'm going to look around at this folder, and if something comes in, I'm going to run a process. And so when a file comes in, it runs the process, and that way users can upload those files and not have to worry about going and kicking off a process or even using an interface at all. They put the file out there, and 10 minutes later, they're going to get an email that says that it finished, depending on how long the process takes, obviously. Out at NOV, we built an entire disaster recovery automation system. So they have the entire stack out there, and they need to have their disaster recovery system set up so that if something happens to their primary environment, they can get back to steady state from basically from yesterday. So once a day, we go through that entire disaster recovery automation process, and they get an email that says whether or not it was complete or not. And they've already had one instance where a password got changed and the automation process wasn't updated. So had they not had the notification, they would have been under the impression that their DR was working when it may not have been. At Camden, we have different processes that trigger. We have patch testing, and then we have backups that are automated as well. For Boardwalk Pipeline, this is a really interesting one. We have an entire use of the framework that really allows us to accelerate the performance of something like FCCS, where there are some performance challenges when you're trying to do big calculations, and SBase and the way that FCCS is utilizing SBase doesn't always perform the way we want it to. We've actually been able to use our automation framework to really speed up and make things possible that previously weren't even possible in FCCS. It's a really interesting case study in and of itself. And then at American Fidelity, we also discovered, for clients that use only Active Directory groups for all of the security management, it's very difficult to do that inside of Oracle's EPM Cloud, even with single sign-on. Single sign-on will simply tell you who the user is. It won't actually tell you anything about what groups they're affiliated with, what groups they're a member of. So if I come in and I manage everything that way, what we ended up being able to do was to use the framework to go through and automate that security synchronization. So now, once a day, that process runs and it updates all their security groups, and they can run it ad hoc if they know they're doing a bunch of ads, where all of their Active Directory groups get synchronized with a group that's on the cloud, and those two things get synchronized every day. So if there's a new group added, it automatically gets added. If there's a new user added or removed, somebody gets terminated, it automatically gets pulled out of that group. So with that, I'm going to turn over control, and we're going to get just a quick demo first of the automation framework as it exists today, and the one that we've used on dozens of clients, and then it'll flip back over to me, and we'll go through and give you guys kind of a preview of the web interface that's coming up for release here in the short term. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stan.
Okay, so to start off with, when we install the framework, this is the directory structure that we have, and I'll just go through some of these briefly. There's a few in here that we don't need and don't really care about, but we'll start off with credentials. As Brian mentioned, all of our passwords that we use are not hard-coded into the PowerShell framework. Instead, they're encrypted, and the one I'm going to be using today is for PBCS is this one here. So if I go in here and look at it, obviously this is not useful to anybody who doesn't have the key. But this is the actual password file that I'm going to use today, and it's going to pass that up to EPM Automate so that PBCS can unencrypt it and log me in. The next directory, documents, this is where our administrator guide is. This is constantly changing, but it's a good way to learn how to do everything. And we've made sure that we've kept fairly up to date on that. We are constantly making changes, so there are some updates that will be coming. We have our error files stored in here. Our log files go in here. I'm going to be using USA Demo, so this is where our log files are. And then process. So when you're thinking about this is how I'm going to do my my steps, this is where the steps are defined. So like with any automation process, you want to go in and say, okay, well, here's the steps that I need to do. How do I do that? So I'll go into this. So this is one of our process files. Actually, let me open up a different one. This guy here. So this is the process file that I'm going to be demoing today. There's 4 steps to it. Our first column here defines the step, and this is mostly for identifying, obviously, the steps in the log files and things like that. Our second column is our sub-steps. So if you wanted to run something in parallel, you could have a single 2 step 2s with a sub-step 1 and 2, and that would cause these 2 scripts to run at the same time. So for this particular one, I'm going to run a business rule called operating expense plan and one called operating expense adjustment plan. And because they are kind of dependent on one another, I'm going to run them synchronously instead of parallel. The next column defines what type of a function I'm going to be calling from this step. In this case, it's always going to be EPM Automate, but it can be OneStream, it can be Maxell, it can be PowerShell, it can be a number of things, and it's all defined in the document on what this needs to be set to. This is our description. This is just a text field that also helps in the logging files to identify exactly what's going on. And then here is our command. This is the command for running the business rule. If anybody's familiar with EPM Automate, you know the first thing you need to do is call the EPM Automate command file. You'll notice here that this is a $sign EPM Automate path. This is a variable that we set up in the framework, and you can custom define these and use any variable that you custom define within your process file, which makes this extremely powerful. So now I can have EPM Automate anywhere I want, and it'll just be passed in here so that I can call it with just calling this variable. And I'm sure you can understand exactly how powerful that can be. If you look at my login command, I'm using this EPM automate path, and then I'm also calling EPM automate cloud environment. This is an array that allows me to define multiple environments, and then all I have to do is just change my element to determine which environment I want to go to. So you can see how incredibly powerful this makes this process file. The next column is my enabled column. For my login, obviously, I've got it set to, let me scroll over a little more. I've got it set to true. You can have this set to true, you can have it set to false, but in this case, in my first command, I have it set to enabled if successful, and then I call out my step and substep. So what this means is I'm going to set a dependency for this business rule to only run if I logged in correctly without any failures. I can also have this set to enabled if false, or I'm sorry, if failed. That tells me if the step prior to this, or whatever I define in here, failed, then go ahead and run this. And obviously I can have it set to false so that it just skips this line. You'll notice that on my next line, this is my next calc script, I have it set to a dependency to run only if the first one was successful. And then the second to last column is this one here. This is I forgot what it was called, but it's continue is what it's called. So if I have this set to false, if there was an error on this line, it would just stop the process completely. We generally have this set to true. There is some small cases in which you might want to set that to false where you don't want to continue anything if it failed. And then the last column is just a description. This is mostly for your documentation. You can document here what the rule is doing or what the step is doing. So how I run this, I'm going to go into PowerShell, and this can also be kicked off from a batch script, but it's a PowerShell script that you would need to run. So there's three elements to this. The first one is my PowerShell batch script, or my PowerShell script, which is called EPM_batch.ps1. It's located in the scripts folder. The next thing is my process name. I'm going to call this USA Demo 2. I generally keep it called to the same thing as my process file, but what this is going to do is it's going to set up my log file directories so that it puts it in one that's called USA Demo 2, and it keeps everything separate based on your process name. And then of course the last one is this process file. This is called USA Demo 2, and it's in my process subdirectory. So if I go ahead and hit that, it's going to go ahead and log in, run each one of my commands, and then log out for me. And these are fairly quick, so that's why I chose these. But you can think about the dependencies. If I had a data load in here and my data load failed, I wouldn't want to run either one of these calc scripts. I'd just want to go straight to the logout. And so that's why these dependencies are so important. So as you can see, I just finished, I logged out. I'm going to jump into my email. And here's the email that it sent me. And you can see my first step, I logged in successfully. My second step, I logged in. Third one, successful. And the last one, I logged out completed. Everything's perfect with this one. But let's say I'm going to change my business rule name. I'm just going to put an X at the end of it or something so that it fails. And so now I'll clear this. We'll go ahead and run it again. It'll log in, but now it won't be able to find the business rule on the first one. So I should fail. It ran a whole lot faster. But now if I go to my my email, and apparently my email wants to take a second. There it is. So now you can see this one failed. Here's the reason that it failed. My next one was skipped because of the prerequisite, and I logged out successfully. But here's my log file. So if I open up my log file, this is my console file. It shows me everything that was in the PowerShell as well. And in case you wanted to actually go and look for that, we can go back into here. I'll back out to there, into my log file. There's my USA Demo 2. And here's my console log file. Here's all my steps log files and my business rule log file. So you can actually dig into, here's the business rule, here's everything that it ran. Here's my console log file that was sent to me in the email. Makes the entire process extremely easy. So now when you want to do your automation, it really is just as simple as defining your steps and writing the process file for it. Everything else is handled for you. Brian? did you want to go ahead and show your piece now?
Sure.
Thank you. Brian, I'll make you the presenter unless you can do it yourself. Let me see. All right. Did that work for you?
It did. I'm sharing my screen.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. Hopefully you can see everything. All right.
Yes,
and so this is our great. So this is our upcoming front-end interface for everything that Stan was just showing you guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in. And then I'm going to go in and just look at our processes. You know, the first thing we'll see is that we have all of our processes that have run recently and kind of whether or not they failed or not and kind of how long they took. So the cool part is we get both the duration and then kind of a moving average. So if things are starting to get slower and slower and slower, you have a little bit of visibility to that through the front-end interface. Then we're going to go in and just kind of edit processes, and we can go pick the one. I'm going to pick this one, which just does a few different, well, I'm going to pick this one actually. And this does very similar to what Sam was just showing, right? It does a login, it does a couple of rules, and then it logs out. But what you'll see is, like, if we wanted to set a prerequisite step, all we do is say, hey, if step one is successful, so there's our PBCS login. So if step one is successful, that's going to give you the same thing that what you just saw on Stan's screen. And then you'll also see we can pop this out if we want to see, you know, the actual highlighted version of the code that we're looking at, so that you can do a little bit better job of making those modifications. So rather than always having to be stuck in a CSV file, which is very functional, this is a lot prettier and a lot easier. And then we can undo and redo all of our steps. We can save all of our changes here. And we can switch back and forth, and it's going to make sure that if I have made changes that it prompts me to save things. The other thing that we have the access to do here is if we go look at our different processes, we can actually go through and run them from here. So I actually have one that's out there waiting to run right now. But we can click this button and it's gonna actually execute it on the back end. We can also duplicate and rename and delete things, or we can just edit the processes directly from inside of here. So you'll see the same similar window that we were looking at earlier, just in an embedded window here. The other thing we have built in now is a scheduler, and we have a lot of different scheduling options. So we can do things every X minutes, every X hours, once daily. We can also schedule things to go every number of minutes on a daily schedule. We can also get all the way into things like follow our close calendar. So this allows us to go in and define a close calendar where days of the month are. So if we wanted to look at June, what day of June close am I doing? So that's June day one, or July day one might be July 1st, right? And in this instance, you'll see we're skipping like 4th of July as a holiday in the weekends. And based on that, we can go and schedule tasks so that we can actually see when something is set to what day of a close calendar something's going to actually run. So this one's set for close calendar, and we'll see it's going to run on which days of the close calendar. Some of them might run all the time, some of them might only run on certain days. The other option we have in here is to do our folder monitoring. So we can look out and see, hey, if I want to set up a folder monitor for a specific file type, maybe I only want to run something for text files. And if it's or a certain text file, then it will go in and run that specific process that we define. And you'll see this is all dynamic based on the dropdowns. We can also modify all of our environment variables from here. So you'll see this is all very PowerShell, but all the $ and things like that. So this is a lot of the stuff we won't really change, but if we keep scrolling down, we might see certain things like our environments. So there's our environment array that Stan was showing off earlier, where it specifies a password. We also can go in and modify all of our different passwords. So if we want to go encrypt a password, whether it's a PowerShell password to connect to something like a SQL database or our SMTP server for our email notifications, we can do all of that from the front end as well. So really kind of taking out the need to really understand things like PowerShell, or really understand exactly where everything is stored, or the different formats of the file, really gives you a much better front end experience. And this will be coming out in the near future as we start to deploy it at clients. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jana, and I think we're gonna keep going on another set of slides.
All right, Jennifer, it is all yours.
Okay, great. Thanks, Yana. Yeah, so this is Jennifer. I just wanted to talk a few minutes about managed support services and the value of having our team support your environment. So one of the big things, and I really appreciate Brian and Stan showing us in detail the automation framework, but one of the nice offerings is implementing automation for administering your environment. So whether that's backups, uh, data loads, monthly loads, forecast cycles, whatnot, implementing this automation framework is a great value for our clients. With our team, we provide reliability and making sure that your environment is, if you're on premise, that you are patched appropriately. We check your logs, whatnot. Anyway, I won't read through this slide, but these are some of the key features of having support services in our team. One of the interesting things about our support services, it's over the last several years, we have an approach using 3 key pillars: our people, process, and tools. So what we just spent time on is learning one of the tools that we use in our group, but our people that provide support, we are all remote. A lot of us are prior administrators, technical folks that are hands-on in your environment. We follow the same processes. Everything's consistent. We have tools that we use across the board for all of our clients so that everyone, while our offering is tailored to what you have in your environment, the process and the way that we manage your environment, how we track tickets, how we collaborate amongst each other when we need to work on issues, all of that's the same. We do provide periodic reviews to our clients to check in, let you know these are some things that are going on in your environment. These are things we've done. Are there areas of improvement for us? Or maybe even if we notice areas of improvement that US Analytics can bring to you, we will bring that up with your teams. We do allow our clients to convert support hours to project work, and so that's a nice feature of our support offering. Anyway, this is a proven approach. We've been doing this for several years. We have a lot of success stories of clients that we actually have provided administration for years, and then we go through an upgrade with them and then continue on the back end on their upgraded environment. Or even some of our clients that have moved to the cloud, we've stayed with them for years. So we do provide value to those folks. Okay, Yana, you want to go to the next slide? So our automation integration slice of our managed support pie. This is a visual that we started last year that kind of shows all the different features of our managed support services. And so historically, infrastructure was probably at the beginning of time when support services, that's kind of what most people think of. But over the years, we've definitely expanded into day-to-day or week-to-week administration, business support, reporting, data analytics, and insight. But where automation framework and what Brian and Stan showed today really ties in with the automation integration. And they did share a slide that has several of our support clients and how we've integrated the automation in that helps our team manage that client more effectively. Okay, you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, and administration, again, these are just some areas that we do month in, month out, updating metadata for our clients. And Brian touched on this a little bit, that you could build in automating metadata updates or updating security, whatnot. And last, the reporting as a service. This is one of the features also, is that we can automate design. Actually, we can design reports that you need and automate taking those reports and building books, batches maybe that run once a week, once a month, whatnot. And we can help with, building out. Many of our folks are professionals, CPA, MBA folks, and so they know what industry needs are and can build out reports or can even share with you what we see at other clients. All right. Thanks, Jonah.
Thank you, Jennifer. So really that concludes our webinar, and we do encourage you to take advantage of our call to action here and schedule your advisory session with us. We're more than willing to walk you through a roadmap and best way to migrate or implement your EPM technologies and incorporate automation into that, or support you with managed support services going into 2021. As always, we're really accessible. You can email us, you can ping us on our chat on our website. Make sure to download some of our resources and dig around through our past webinar replays. They're all very, very helpful, and hopefully they can assist you in your EPM strategy in 2021. So with that said, we will wrap things off here, and thank you so much to our presenters today and for your expertise in walking all of us through this incredible tool. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care.